Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Live. The date is September 16th of 2024. So I hope everybody is doing well out there. We're now into September. Of course, if you have kids that are in school, they're getting back into the routines. And maybe some of you have sent kids off to college or something. So maybe your homes are a little quieter than usual. Maybe you're enjoying it. Here in Florida, it was still hot this past weekend, playing a disc golf tournament. Although it wasn't very windy, but it was very humid. And so I got that done. We'll be talking about that. And otherwise, pretty average week. Nothing too unusual going on down here, I don't think. But I'll get into some of those things. What's going on since we all got together last Monday. I have a fantastic show lined up for you tonight. As you can see in the title for this live show tonight, I want to talk a little bit about some developments in the Asha Degree disappearance. This little girl who went missing over 20 years ago. And some things have happened within the last few weeks. Also want to talk about this guy from, about 4 years ago, who was going on this cross-country trip saying that he was a friend of Kanye West. And he was going out west to help Kanye West somehow. And this guy went missing. And then I want to go over, of course, the third title is Thorough Means Thorough. And I'm going to use the example of a line from The Princess Bride, the movie, even though I'm not a huge fan of that movie, to go over a disappearance. And I went back and looked at the original news story going way back to the 1970s. And this disappearance, or a couple guys who went missing, they were both found. They were both found recently. So we're going to look at that original article and then compare it to the resolution for their disappearances and see what we can learn from that. And of course, I have some other things to talk about. And I do have a Panky letter to show all of you, at least read part of it. And he did answer a couple of questions that I asked him from a couple weeks ago. Of course, I went over those questions last week. He did answer a couple of them in this letter that I got just a few days ago. And he says that he will be answering the other ones in due time. So we'll see if he comes through. Anyway, let's see who is in here. And then we'll move on to some of the topics of tonight's show. Hello, Pookley. Man, Pookley was in here at 2:34. I doubt Pookley is still in here. Everything, what's going on with you? Karen, nephew, Charlie, what's going on with you? Good to see you, everything. Good to see you, everything. And then Kathy, hello to you, Kathy. How are you doing out there in California? Charlie, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate it. You are very generous. Thank you for that. Samantha, Amy, Sarah, I saw that. Sarah, did you send me a friend's request on Facebook? Are you the Sarah who did that? Please say if you are, and if so, thank you. I'll be accepting that. And then Assistant Cherie, good to see you, Cherie. Cherie's already told me it's going to be an early night for her, do some things she has going on. But Cherie, good to see you tonight. Thank you for keeping an eye on the chat while you are here. All right, Sarah, I'm going to accept that. Just want to make sure, as you know, Sarah, a lot of weird things go on Facebook. People, stealing other people's accounts and everything. And I'm going to confirm you right now. So there you go, Sarah. Thank you for requesting to be friends with me on there. Appreciate it. So since we got together this time last week, and maybe you noticed that my voice is sounding a little bit better, I've been doing my singing practice, getting back into that after a few weeks of bad voice circumstances, going back to the late August into early September. But voice is feeling good now. Was doing singing practice Thursday, Friday last week, and Saturday. Couldn't do that at a disc golf tournament. And then on Sundays and Mondays, I don't do my practicing because I do a lot of talking due to the think tank last night and then this live show tonight. So I try to give my voice a break from singing practice, but get back into that tomorrow. What's going on? This past weekend, played some good and bad disc golf up there in Floral City. Had to go up there and play, even though I knew I really wasn't prepared. I love that course out up there. And although the first round was from the long tees, I did not have one birdie at all. Not good at all. And then yesterday we played from the short tees, and I played pretty good. And in fact, my score was better than the guy in my division who actually ended up winning my division. So I felt good about that. I think I had out of 15, 16 players, I think I had maybe the fourth or fifth best score. But you should know after the first round, I was next to last place. So out of like 15, I was 14th or something. It was pretty bad. But maybe as I've said last week, going over there to Orlando and playing brought me to a realization about what exactly am I trying to do here. My form's not good. I play up and down and all around. But on the other hand, I do not intend on stopping of playing a disc golf. So something has to give. Either I'm going to be up and down and all around and play like that for the rest of my life, or I can try to actually do something about it. And I've chosen to do something about it, and that is going back to the absolute basics of disc golf. And so I'm going back to, because I never did any of that when I started. And because of that, I developed some bad habits that you can manage, but it's one of those things where you're only going to be able to get to a certain level and you're never going to be able to progress past that. You're never going to be bad, but you're never going to be very good either. And although I've won, of course, I had the yips for a while, but I've won quite a bit over the last few years, but it was just right at that level. And that's just not good enough for me. So I've decided, you know what? I'm going to be playing. Maybe I'll live for a little while longer. Then I might as well play the sport the right way. And I've gone back to just the basics of planting both feet on the ground and learning to throw the right way. And it's going to take some time, but I'm looking at it like I'm looking at my singing, that I've been doing that for a year and a half, and I've progressed so much. So I'm hoping I can do the same with my disc golf. That a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, by going backwards, I can go forwards. And that is my attitude. And I actually got that kind of thinking from the guy whose course I'm taking, singing course. His name is Ken Tamplin. You can find him on YouTube. But he will tell this story about how he got started out as a guitarist. And he was pretty good. And then he ended up going to the Guitar Institute in LA, a very famous place. A lot of famous guitarists, mainly from the 1980s, have taught there, have gone there. So it's been around for a while. And he went there and he thought he was pretty good. And one of the first teachers he had there told him, you're a pretty good guitarist, but you're not picking the right way. And you're never going to progress past the player you are right now if you continue to play like that. You're very good, but you're never going to get as good as you can be, or the people around you who are other students here. You're going to have to go back to basics on that. And at that time, Ken had been playing for a long time. And he had developed a bad habit. And he actually took him 2 years to learn how to do this particular thing, picking or whatever, the right way. Even though he was always experienced guitarist, probably a lot of bands would have easily, was certainly good enough to be in a lot of bands, because he found out that he wasn't picking the right way on some sort of technique. He decided, I guess I'm going to have to go back to basics, because I learned, and it took him all that time to get rid of his bad habits and do the skill the right way. And so after hearing that, I'm like, yeah, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. I got to go get rid of my bad habits, start absolutely back at scratch, from scratch, as if I never played before. So that's what I'm doing. So a little bit of that got incorporated into this weekend, but it's going to be a while, and I'm not really that ticked off. Like I said, I played okay on Sunday, incorporating a little bit of what I've been working on over the last 2 weeks. But it's gonna be a while. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of bad rounds ahead of me. I just have to live with it. And as I stated on Facebook, all that winning in trivia has to be evened out somehow, and that is by getting blown out in disc golf. Everything, kind of always evens out. So I've been getting up in the morning, like at 8, getting up for me, which is early, at 8. And I've been going up here to the park with a net and just throwing into the net from standstill. That's it, for like an hour. And like I said, it didn't help me too much from the longs, but like I said, from the shorts, where all the baskets were only 200, 250 feet away, it wasn't so bad there. But I fully intend to be, like 2 years from now, looking out 2 years, so I'll be 56 years old. The plan is to be way better than I am now. But the only way I can get there is going back to scratch. Because the way I was playing, it just too much to manage, making things a lot harder than they should be. So that's what's going on there. And I'm going to get blown out. Have to put my ego to the side for a while. Jeremiah, hello, Jeremiah. What's going on, Jeremiah? Good to see you in the chat tonight. Some of you may remember that I met Jeremiah. Man, it seems like yesterday, Jeremiah, but that was way back in May? Right? I met Jeremiah over in Orlando. We took a picture together. I think you were over in Daytona, and I had gone over there for a disc golf tournament. And we met up, and that was really cool to meet Jeremiah, one of the first followers of Unfound. In fact, Jeremiah is the one that started the discussion group on Facebook. And he says, throw for show, putt for dough. Well, I got to tell you, Jeremiah, I think in disc golf, it's throw for dough and putt for show. That's the way I look at it, by the way. As you know, Jeremiah, Worlds, Evelina Salonen is a horrible putter. She just won Worlds being a horrible putter. So I think it may be that way for ball golf, but for disc golf, you better be a great thrower if you want to be good. And then you can just probably putt average. Hello, Stephanie. Good to see you. And then Cherie says, yes, Jeremiah is the original gangster. Yes, Jeremiah is one of the Unfound OGs. No doubt about that. Good way to put it, Cherie. Good way to put it. Moving on to some other things. Usually not much into supplements and vitamins and things like that. That's never really been a part of my life at all. Into my 50s, I think a lot of that stuff is hokey. But going back, something that I have started taking now, and really I'm taking it so my voice can stand up to doing the show, doing the think tank, and doing my practicing and everything. I've started to take a collagen every day. And this was on the recommendation, once again, to bring up Ken Tamplin again. He has a video in his course about how he takes care of his voice, doing all the talking and rehearsing and singing and performing and everything that he does. And he takes a collagen, like 20 grams of collagen, something like that, every day. And so I have started to do that myself, and we're going to see how that works out. And he doesn't make any, it was just what he does. It's not he's not getting paid, I don't think, to endorse these products or anything, but he showed one of them on the screen. I said, okay, I'll try it out. So I got it the middle of last week. And so I've been taking that twice a day, and we'll see if I notice any changes. Of course, collagen's great for all parts of your body, especially your joints. But you have to remember that your vocal cords are made out of collagen. They're not made out of muscle or tendons or anything, or, just like a meat, not even out of cartilage like your earlobes or whatever. It's made out of collagen. And so you got to take up, of course, you have collagen in your joints and everything. And I will see if I have any, see if I see any changes there, because I'm going back to the gym as well. I'm lifting weights. In fact, I lifted today. And he says it'll make your hair and your fingernails grow like crazy. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted, maybe a week from now, a few weeks from now. But I'll be taking that 2 times a day, and I'm taking it with lactose-free chocolate milk is what I'm mixing it in. So it's a powder that I'm mixing in there. And I'm not naming the brand name. I'm not trying to, this is not an endorsement or anything, but we'll see how it works out. And I'm all for making sure my voice stays nice and loose and everything, considering how much I'm using it these days, because after what happened at the end of August into early September, I thought those days were behind me. I guess I was wrong, going back to like last year, and I got to take care of my voice. And also, like I've already stated, my trivia team has now won 4 weeks in a row on Wednesday nights. It's crazy. I think we won by 2 points. And we're just finally firing on all cylinders. And not to rub it into the rest of my teammates, but we only missed one question last Wednesday night, and they didn't go along with me on that question. I'm not saying I'm upset. I think I would be upset if we lost because of that. It really, in the end, didn't really mean anything. But the question was, who is the winningest NFL coach of all time? That was the question. And I right away knew that it was Don Shula. Of course, Baltimore Colts and then Miami Dolphins coach. Unfortunately, they wanted to put down Bill Belichick, and that was wrong. That is the only question we missed this past Wednesday night. And so out of a possible of whatever, we were only 2 points short of a perfect score. And we have gotten, I think we've gotten perfect scores twice before. One when I was there, one time when I was there, one time when I was not there. But we just continue to win. And we got one more week to get into the top 5 so we can play for money a month or a week and a half from now. So, and I didn't, of course, for me personally, just when I go, as you know, some of you know, I go by myself. Didn't get to go this weekend because I wasn't in town. I was up there in Floral City. By the way, being up there in Floral City, I stayed at an Airbnb in Brooksville, and wow, it was out in the sticks. But it was fantastic. Driving to this place, I saw some deer, and I also saw a flock of turkeys on the side of the road as I was driving to this place. And it was his own little cabin separate from like the main house. And it was really quiet. Of course, it had Wi-Fi, great air conditioning, dark. You know, you turn out all the lights. It's like really, really dark. And I would certainly like to stay in that Airbnb place again if I can, because it's only like 15 minutes from the course. I'd never stayed at that Airbnb before, and it worked out really well. And on top of that, I got to have dinner with my good buddy Dana up there because he was assistant tournament director for the tournament. And so we went out and ate after I was done playing, and he bought. So that was nice as well. Thank you, Dana. So what's everybody saying? Sarah says, how do I get a star next to my name? Sarah, you can get a star. Maybe some of you are already explaining it to her, by becoming a supporter on YouTube by hitting the join button, Sarah. And you get some things that other people do not by signing up there. So please consider it. That's how you get a star by your name. Amy says, collagen great for the skin as well. Yeah, maybe all of you will notice as I continue to do these live shows. Yeah, thank you, Sheree. I'm a member. I will go to my PC. Fishing. Hello, Cindy. What's going on? That's fishing. All right. Thank you, Cindy. Good to see you. It's Unfound YouTube membership. I think it is $2.99 a month, different than the Patreon. Make sure. Sarah, it's very annoying. The iPhone users like myself can't see the join button. YouTube really should fix that. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's different from the Patreon support. Sarah, if you're supporting Unfound on Patreon, that's plenty, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Really, thank you a lot. All right, let's get to anything else going on with me. I think that's it. I think that's all the personal stuff, everything that has gone on since last Monday. Disc golf, lifting, trivia, taking a collagen supplement. Oh, yeah, by the way, I woke up today at the lightest weight that I've been in a while. I woke up, weighed myself today. I was 176.8 pounds. And like I said, I've been working on my diet and working out and doing some things, and certainly seeing an improvement there. So I'm 176.8 pounds, at least I was this morning when I got up. And if you don't know, I'm just an average height guy of like 5'9". And I know that might seem on, like the heavy side, but I'm certainly not fat or anything, but I'm a little bit of a thick guy because of my years of really, really working out and everything. Maybe if you saw me in person, you'd understand. I would like to get down to the low 170s, though. I think I could afford to get down to the low 170s. Sheree, where did you get the collagen regular pharmacy? I just got a powder that I got off Amazon, Sheree, as a recommendation from the guy whose singing course I'm taking. So that's how I got it, Sheree. Let's move on. All right, let's get into the true crime stuff. And as you are watching tonight, I'm hoping that you will give this show, this channel, a thumbs up. Please recommend it to other people. It's one of the few places anywhere that does true crime news. Where I go through, this is what I do. I go through news that's going on out there and try to bring to you the news stories that I think are most relevant to what we do here at Unfound. Although I've talked about some unsolved murders and other things. I of course talked about Sherry Papini and other things, but I try to go through the news, anything that's happened since the last live show, and make it interesting for all of you. So first off, let's just go to the first Unfound item, and that would be the Matthew Keith poll. Of course, that was the episode that came out this past Friday. His common law wife, Joy, and Matthew and Joy's niece, Allie, were the guests. I thought they did a fantastic job, both of them. And I think you could tell that Joy, although she's the one that experienced Matthew's disappearance personally, I think you could tell that Allie's really trying to help her more on the computer, technical, doing research and stuff of that, like that side of it. I think you could tell that. And I think that they make a pretty good team there. Matthew's disappearance, difficult to, come to a firm conclusion. A lot of wiggle room, not a ton of facts. All we have is that he allegedly got out on that particular date and was supposed to get on a bus, and who knows what happened. But on that topic, the poll question in the discussion group was, do you believe that Matthew got on that bus? The story is that some police officer, deputy, took him to the bus station with that voucher. Matthew was supposed to get on the bus and was supposed to go back to East Texas, where Marshall, Texas is. And he never arrived. It's an 800-some-mile trip. We remember how big Texas is. He never arrived. He was never seen again. 85% of the respondents, the poll people in the discussion group said no. Matthew did not get on the bus. 85%. Once again, I asked, did Matthew Keith get on that bus? 85% of the people who answered the poll said no. Now, in the think tank, and if you're wondering what the think tank is, of course, I bring it up every week, but I'm going to do it again anyway. You can become a member of the think tank at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can see it across the screen right there at the bottom. And that is a group that gets together on Sunday evenings. And we go very, very, very deep into the weeds of the disappearance for that week. Do a lot of theorizing. I throw I bring to the discussion what I call points to ponder about the disappearance, and everybody gets to give their opinions. Nobody is, of course, attacked or anything. It's a free thought meeting. Very, very one of the most private groups that you could ever be involved in true crime. It's the Unfound Think Tank. You can sign up for it at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You do have to sign up, though, at the top level. In the think tank, 100% of the people in there last night said nope. Matthew did not get on the bus. So in the discussion group on Facebook, 85% said no. In the think tank, 100% of the people said no. And then, as I mentioned at the end of every episode, I write a blog. As you, Of course, if you've been listening to Unfound for any amount of time, you know that I don't offer a ton of opinion in the episodes, and I certainly never reveal what I think happened in the podcast that comes out every Friday in those episodes, because I want all of you to be free thinkers here at Unfound. I'd like to say that I'm trying to teach you how to think, not what to think. But I will tell you, in writing the blog, and it's only $2 a month at Patreon for just the blog and getting the episodes early, by the way. I also decided that Matthew did not get on the bus. So 85% in the discussion group. The think tank members, 100% of them thought no. And for me personally, I also thought no, but I went into a lot of other items in writing the blog. And you should know the blog is usually that I write is over 3,000 words. And then I do an audio version of it as well that ends up being about 17 minutes. So if you sign up at Patreon, it's like getting an additional podcast where you get the regular podcast, which of course are usually like an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours long. But then you add in another 17 minutes where then you get to hear my thoughts about what was covered, of course, is something I do not do publicly. One more note. Hey, Jill. Hello, Jill. What's going on with you? And great episode. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for saying so. Appreciate it. There's Mary Jane. Mary Jane is one of the newest members of the think tank, and she's loving it so far. You can see her. She posted right there in the chat. Thank you for saying so, Mary Jane. That might motivate some of you to sign up at patreon.com. Hazel from New Zealand saying, that's all right, Hazel. You're allowed to be late. The only person who's not allowed to be late is me. Jill, good to see you. This poll, discussion group poll, Hazel says was definitely the easiest to answer for me in 1 second. So Hazel, I guess you answered no then. You did not get on the bus. And Mary Jane says, being a Patreon member, I also like getting the episode early. In fact, I've added something new just recently. For anybody who signs up at the $5 level, not only do you get the episode early, but you also get it with no commercials, no ads. So you might want to think about that for all of you out there. One more thing regarding the discussion group, and this is kind of popped up recently, and I think some of you know that I'm a very good guy. I think I'm a pretty good guy. I'm a very fair guy. I think that when you watch this live show, you get a really good impression of who I am. I think if you were to meet me in person, I'm pretty much the person you see on this live show. But I do not suffer fools kindly. And I've noticed just within the last couple months in the discussion group, I will post, I'll post the poll and I'll ask, of course, like this week, did Matthew get on the bus? And there were actually a couple people who are in the Unfound discussion group on Facebook, in which to get in there, they have to ask to be in. They answered by saying, who is Matthew? What are you talking about? I'm guaranteeing all of you, if anybody does that, they're getting kicked out of the discussion group. If you're not listening to the podcast, then I don't know what you're doing in there. I just don't suffer fools kindly. You're not even going to like, well, what's going on here? Why did Ed post that? What are you doing? So if you do not know the topic of the poll in the discussion group, that means you aren't listening. You are not listening to the podcast. Thus, you're getting kicked out of this discussion group. I just have no time. I'm not going to manage something like that. So that it's happened a few times over the last month. And whether these people even realize they've been kicked out of the group, I have no idea, because it seems like they were clueless otherwise. But just so you know, for future reference, of course, all of you are watching in the live show. Obviously, you're some of Unfound's most devoted listeners and viewers and everything, and I appreciate every one of you. But for people who, I understand it. Everybody has their own lives to live. But if you don't know, why a poll is being posted every Saturday morning and you're not aware what's going on there, then I have to wonder, what's going on here? Are you a troll? What are you doing in here? So you will get kicked out. I just got no time. Sarah, let's see here. I'm going back up here. Stephanie says, I'm surprised so many people thought he did get on the bus. And our response is usually more mixed than these polls. Stephanie, that's a really good question. I try to make the questions at least a little difficult to answer. But being with Matthew's disappearance, that I thought that the bus topic was so important, I felt forced to ask a question about that. I suppose I could have asked a question that might have come up more closer to like a 50-50 type of pattern of response. But I thought that really, did he get on the bus or not was such an important part of this disappearance. I felt motivated to ask it. So, it's just hard for me to say. Sometimes the results are very mixed, and then sometimes they're very skewed one way or the other, Stephanie. It just depends. But for Matthews, the bus thing was just like right there in everybody's face. He gets dropped off there. Well, do you think he got on the bus or not? I got to ask it. It just is a given. Sarah says, yes, I love getting the episode earlier. Well, you will continue to get that, Sarah. Mary Jane says, good, they should be kicked out. Sarah says, that's ridiculous. Hazel says, oh dear. Hazel says, the reason the poll was easy to answer was as I listened, I thought myself, nah, he never got on that bus. As you were in the majority on that one, Hazel. It's a real shame the vouchers don't go through a record system to verify it was used. Well, the question is, Hazel, is there no system? Yeah, I have to admit, even having done the episode and talking to Joy and Allie, I'm not sure there is or not. Maybe there is, and the police just don't want to talk about it. It's hard to tell. Even 13 years after his disappearance, it's hard to tell. When Allie's dog barked, my little pup Dinks looked at the screen. Yeah, there's only so many things I can edit out there, Hazel. I don't mind, truthfully, I don't mind an occasional dog barking in the background. But if it's over and over and over, then we have to take care of it. All right, moving on. So that was the Matthew Keith poll. I think that came up, that's a disappearance, though. I think we came up with some, between me talking to them and then last night with the think tank and learning, kind of getting into the mind of some of the think tank members. I think that we've given Allie and Joy some things to do, even after 13 years, looking more into Tony Falcon, kind of giving it a second or third effort regarding the voucher stuff. And even a particular listener is doing a little work there in Arizona on her own time, looking into a couple things. So, and I also, Rec, you should know, I don't mind saying this publicly. I also gave them the recommendation that probably the records of whoever, if anybody went to visit Matthew while he was in jail for those 8 months, or anybody he called or called him, or ever they get privileges like that, those records probably still exist. It would be interesting to know who visited him and who might have called him over those 8 months. Maybe there will be some leads there. And Joy and Allie admitted that's not something that they thought of. So maybe there might be something there. Maybe. Yeah, Hazel say, yeah, it was a hard one. Rockford, if the police admit they know what happened to the voucher, maybe they can be held accountable for future ex-cons who misuse them. I can understand not wanting that hassle. I guess you just think when a guy goes missing, it seems like that would be a 2-minute job. But I think, Rockford, that's why maybe everybody could read between the lines, even though I have to admit that I had it edited out because they went off on a tangent about the police and everything. You could probably read between the lines that both of them are somewhat suspicious of this voucher thing. I don't think I'm speaking out of school on that. Hazel, yes, for sure. You help them think of ways to dig a little bit. Just a few things. So one of them, it's important. We realize some of these disappearances probably not going to be solved in our lifetimes. And I'm not saying Matthews is not one of those. I think it's perfectly solvable. But certainly, and I would never name them, there are certainly disappearances that we've featured on Unfound. It's just hard to imagine how they're going to get solved, given what we think we know about them. But still, one of my goals with every episode is trying to give the guests things to do, new things to do. That's why we do the think tank. That's why it takes maybe a month for a person to actually be on Unfound, because I'm looking at the information, I'm analyzing that, I'm asking them additional questions. Have you done this? Have you done that? And many times we happen upon things that can still be done, even after 13 years or 20 years or 30 years or whatever. So it's not just about interviewing these people and publicizing it. I'm trying to give them things to do because a lot of them have run out of things to do. And that can be very frustrating with them. As we know in all our lives, even though most of us have not experienced the disappearance, when we get frustrated about something in our lives, what helps us is feeling like you're actually doing something about it. You're keeping busy doing something constructive that can help your mental state and your emotional state, instead of just sitting around and stewing and, they say in psychology, catastrophizing the situation. Keep your mind busy. And that's one of the things I try to get, trying to get the guests to do. Rockford, not defending it, just saying I could see the logic. Yeah. My guess is, Rockford, I'm not saying there's anything suspicious going on there, but I think what I'm saying with the vouchers, it very well may be that it's kind of just a slipshod system, just like handing out coupons. Here you go. Here you go. And there's really no paperwork other than that. And they don't, maybe, want to be, maybe because they've never had somebody go missing before after this, and him going missing kind of maybe exposed how shoddy this kind of system was or whatever. Certainly possible. All right, let's move on to this. I told you last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago, that after the Oxygen Network show came out, I sent Steve Panky in jail in Colorado. And some of you don't know, I've been communicating with him for over a year now through letters. There were a bunch of questions that popped up in my mind after watching the show. I will tell you, I learned some things that I didn't know. And I went through those 2 weeks ago in that live show that went 2.5 hours. I talked about that. Well, after that show was done, I watched it, or I didn't get to watch it. What happened? I had to watch it in DVR. I took notes from it. And from those notes, I created a list of questions, and I mailed those questions to Steve the next day. And as I told you last week, he sent me a couple letters back, but none of it had to do with those questions. But I did get a letter, what was it, Thursday or Friday, with a couple of the questions answered. And he states that he will be sending additional letters with additional answers. So, and as I stated, I told you if I could, I would read you some of those answers. And so here we have this letter. Now, part of it I'm not going to be able to read because some of it is, well, let's say it, I'm not saying it's not true, but it is inflammatory. And before I could ever read it in public, I would really have to see if Steve is telling the truth or not on that particular topic, just so you know. But it was a question that I did ask him. So I got this. This letter is dated September 5th of 2024. So here we go. Steve Panky writing back to me, and then I'm going to get into some other items regarding this. He goes, Ed, thank you again for what you said on Oxygen. Once again, I'm not sure if he got to watch it or not. I have no idea. He doesn't say that he could watch. I mean, he's in jail. Do they get the Oxygen Network in jail? Probably not. He goes on to say the discovery items for both trials is the Bible of the Janelle Matthews case. It is the cornerstone upon what did and what did not happen. And he goes on to say attorney Tony Vjorst, of course, that was his first attorney. You should know, I talked to Tony Vjorst sometime last year. Since then, he's not returned any of my emails, but I did have a cordial conversation back and forth a few times. Since then, he hasn't responded to anything. What are you going to do? But he says the attorney Tony Vjorst has the discovery materials. The DA has the discovery materials, and the court has the discovery materials because for a long time now, Steve has wanted me to get them. Well, you should know that I've put my assistant, Eric, I think some of you know him. If you're a member of Patreon, you certainly know him from running On the Ground, Unfound on the Ground, and for maybe some of you YouTube people too. Assistant Eric, who I interviewed, remember his interview came out early this year along with Cherie's and Emily's and Carrie's. I have given Eric the task of getting those discovery materials because he has some time this fall into winter season because of situations with the job that he has. I heard that he was going to be having a little more free time than usual. So I asked him, would you have time to do a few small unfound jobs for me? He said, of course. And so I sent him like a list of like 8 different things. And I said, you pick out 4 or 5, whatever. I'm not going to tell you which ones to pick. You certainly do not have to take all of them. But I gave him like 8 and he's picked out a few of them. And one of them he chose to do is getting the discovery materials. So he has been on that and I have filled out the paperwork. And he's responsible for turning it in and managing, he's the one calling there, emailing there. I'm just signing forms and things. And so we'll see. This is a little different than a requesting information like for an investigation. We have to FOIA it. We have to remember the trial is done. Steve was found guilty. And thus, discovery materials are public record. It's not an investigation anymore. So I'm thinking we're going to get them. Of course, on the other hand, given that I know the DA and Detective Prill and Detective Cash know what I've been saying over the past, how long now, 1.5 years, about both trials. And being that they also surely watched the show that was on the Oxygen Network a couple weeks ago, and they know what I said on there, I suppose I could get turned down. I suppose, maybe. But we're going through the proper channels, and we'll see what happens there. My guess is the discovery materials will be huge in nature. I think they're all electronic, though. I think they're all like PDF files or whatever. In addition, because it's public record, I don't think I'll have to pay for them, which is nice. Unlike the transcripts that for the trials, which I've had Eric look into that as well. It just would be cost prohibitive. Too much. It's just, I don't, and plus I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of it. So, whereas Steve's key, I mean, I don't know how many times over the last year he's mentioned, you need to look at the discovery materials. You need to look at the discovery. He must have said it 10 times. I said, okay, maybe I'll just take him at his word and we'll see what we could do. And if I can get him and it doesn't cost too much, then I guess that's what I'll do. So Eric is working on that. Of course, I would never hold it against Eric if we can't get them. If we don't get them, it will be because somebody in the powers that be in Weld County in Colorado decided that I shouldn't have them. I'm not saying that'll necessarily be the end of the road in trying to get them. As Steve said, maybe I could try Tony Vjorst again. If maybe I'll just have to call him instead of email him. I don't know. I'm just hoping this is going to work out and we'll get them. And I will start looking into those discovery materials in my free time. And I will see if Steve is telling the truth. Because here's the thing that Steve has said a lot in these letters. And there are many. If you don't know how many Steve Panky letters I've gotten, I have the stack right beside me. I'll show you right here. All Steve Panky letters right there. Right here. He has said a lot about these discovery materials. He goes, you will see this in Discovery, see that in Discovery, you'll see this. Well, being that I don't have the discovery materials, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not, so I can't read those parts of the letters. And so my goal, of course, as with anything like this, is to find out if somebody, no matter if it's a guest or a suspect or a convicted murderer like Steve Panky or whoever, the goal is always to try to best figure out, is this person telling the truth or not? And given that Steve keeps urging me to get these discovery materials because he says there's things in them, well, I guess we're going to find out. And if we get them and, when I find time to look through them, we'll be able to, I'll start talking about that on here in amongst everything else as to here's what Steve said was in the discovery materials. Is that actually in the discovery materials? He says you need to find this in the discovery. It's all in the discovery materials. Well, is it in there or not? Because what he's claiming is there were a lot of things that should have been let into both trials that were not let in. We'll see. So Eric is working on that. And like I said, Eric is also working on a few other things. And I will tell you one of the other items not connected to Steve Panky in any way. Although coincidentally, this happened in the same year of 1984, is for a long time now, I have had a fascination with the disappearances of Angela Westberry and Teresa Hickman. These are two young women, late teens, who went missing from Jacksonville Beach. It's like the same area to me. Over on the Atlantic coast of Florida in 1984. And I've tried to get a few people, volunteers, not the volunteers that as my assistants, volunteers like Sheree, etc. But I've put kind of some feelers out once in a while to people who are listeners of Unfound, asking them, would you like to work on a disappearance for me in your spare time? And I have to be honest, every person who I've given this task has, well, dropped out. They gave it a couple weeks and dropped out. Because on my own, I have collected quite a bit of information on Angela and Teresa's disappearances. And if you don't know, they went missing 1984. They allegedly got on a very nice boat with two guys and never came back. And however, the boat, eventually the same boat, allegedly the same boat, was eventually seen not long after they went missing in the Cayman Islands. But there's no corresponding missing persons report of any men missing, just these two girls. And I've gotten to speak to two of Angela's sisters, although it's been years now. And I've also gotten to speak to Teresa's parents. And unfortunately, since then, her father's died. As you can imagine, her parents, very old. But I think her mother's still alive, but the father died of cancer a few years ago. But I got to talk to them, took a lot of notes. And one of the things that I have Eric working on is contacting the U.S. Coast Guard and figuring out how that would have worked back in the early 1980s, where two girls go missing. They're on a boat. They have the name of the boat. Unfortunately, the name of the boat is a very common name for a boat. And it's not, I don't have it in my notes, but you can find it out there. And it's a particular kind of boat called a Richardson boat. If you'd see one, you'd know it. If I show you, I've seen that kind of boat before. It was a Richardson style type of boat built by the Richardson Company. And they allegedly got going out on a cruise, never came back. And so what I want Eric to find out in contacting the Coast Guard, how would that have worked in the 1980s? Where two girls go missing. They allegedly got on this boat in Jacksonville. The name of the boat is this. And then how would it be that the U.S. Coast Guard would find out about a boat, maybe the same one, being in the Cayman Islands, and what would be the procedures, on and on and on. That's also something that I have Eric working on. That's also one of the tasks that he has chosen to take on. And like I said, I've tried to give these two girls' disappearances to a few people over the last 5 years, and I think it was a little much for people. I'm of course, as you know, I'm very hardcore. This is what I do when it comes to disappearances. And you can find out very quickly how hardcore other people are when you give them what you know is a very difficult task. Everybody, I like to get on the internet and research stuff, and I love going to web sleuths, and I love going down rabbit holes and everything else. Well, then try this and see how this works out for you. And there's just people that were like, nope, can't do it. So we're going to find out. It seems like these girls might have been murdered. There's no proof of that. But if they really got on a boat and never came back, and the boat was seen later in the Cayman Islands, and there's no corresponding disappearance reports for two men from that area, then what are we talking about here? So I've known about their disappearances for a long time, well before I ever started Unfound. This is kind of like Jody Hughes and Trude's disappearance. Knew about it for, I guess almost a couple decades before I started Unfound. Likewise, I've known about Angela's and Teresa's disappearances for a long time, probably since the late 90s, even well before I even moved to Florida. And it was always something that caught my eye. And so we're trying to move it forward. And I guess what's really amazing to me is that there's never been one podcast ever done on their disappearance, even though it's two young women who, went missing together. You have a boat, you have, the Cayman Islands and everything involved. This could be some sort of international. Did they get kidnapped and taken to the Cayman Islands? Were they sex trafficked or something like that? And still, I don't think there's ever been one podcast done on any of it. Might have been some blogs written, but that's about it. So that's something that I have Eric working on, because I think for me, of course, Eric wants to continue to work on it even further. Fantastic. Doesn't have to. But what I realized in looking into it when I had the time some years ago, I realized that the next step was really understanding how all of that communication would have worked in the 1980s when a boat is seen somewhere else, and how does that get back to the United States? I think it's a little easier to understand now with the internet and everything. But in 1980s terms, how would that have worked? And what would be the procedure for something like that? I just got to that point where it's like, I have to understand this. And, but, doing the podcast and doing these episodes every week takes up most of my work time. So I can only work on so many things in the background. So Eric, if he's listening tonight or watching, I really appreciate what you're doing there for that. And I'm pretty sure that Eric will talk to somebody at the Coast Guard and somebody who would know something like that and be able to explain it to him. And I told him, Eric, just be upfront with him. You help me doing the podcast. We know about these disappearances. Here's what we know. We know about this boat. All we're trying to do is understand Coast Guard procedure in the United States when you're dealing with the Cayman Islands, which is not, a property of the United States. It's not like Puerto Rico or something. And understanding how that would all work and what you would do, what would be done. And if he finds that out, I'll let all of you know. What is everybody? Oh, I'm going to read the Steve Panky letter. Hold on a second. I'll continue on that. Sarah, thank you for becoming. You are very generous, Sarah. Thank you so much. Hello, Ferry. What's going on, Ferry? Cherie says, boat records similar to the vehicles. I searched some boat records regarding Amanda Farrell's disappearance because one of the leads was Lou Frank had a boat. I remember that, Cherie. That was like yesterday, right? That seems like yesterday, but that was like 2018, because if people don't remember, Melissa Fravel's episode, came out, right before or right after Tom Brown's episode, right, Cherie? So that's like over 6 years ago. Man, it seems like yesterday. Sarah says, I believe Jody was kidnapped by a fan. I think that's a very good choice, Sarah. Sarah says, perhaps the girls drowned. Well, maybe, but what happened to the guys then, Sarah? That's the question. What are we talking about here? If they did go off with two guys, why did they go missing? But we don't have a corresponding record of any two guys missing from that time frame. It's hard to understand. Rockford says, and I don't want to get onto it. There's a lot of other tangents regarding Angela's and Teresa's disappearances too. I really don't want to get into it tonight. Rockford, that's a wild disappearance, and the lack of coverage makes me wonder what else is going on. Makes me think there might be a lot of police holdback in the case. You should know, Rockford, that did I do that? Or maybe somebody did a FOIA. And did get some paperwork on it, Rockford, and it was like, and it wasn't even like the police withholding. It was like a piece of paper or something like that. It wasn't, well, we have stuff, but there's only so much we could give you. It was just, they sent because I know I've seen the paperwork. It was like nothing. So I don't know if there's necessarily any holdback, but as you would imagine, Rockford, there's things that I can't get into tonight. A lot of different, like I said, a lot of different tangents regarding their disappearances. It does seem like yesterday crazy. Yeah, Amanda Fravel's disappearance over 6 years ago. Sarah says, IDK, I don't know, Ed. Yes, perhaps the girls drowned. Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing is, Sarah, did they drown on accident or did they drown on purpose? You know, we're trying to find it out. Like I said, it's one of those disappearances. Okay, now I'm going to look into it. You got me. Rockford, I'm more than happy to send you. You know, you're a think tank member. We've talked a lot of. I'll send you my notes. If you want to look at it, go ahead. I will, after we're done tonight, email me or something. And I don't mind giving the notes to you because we've talked about so many things in your think tank and everything. I'll send them to you if you want to look at it. Everything that I've collected. I have no problem with that. Just send me a reminder to do that, though. Sarah, but getting back into the Steve Panky lab, that's where I went off on this tangent. All right. So I said, getting into discovery materials, Eric's trying to do that. Here was the first question that he answered. My question to him, if you watch the show, there was something that was brought up about how his ex-wife, his aunt, it was his wife at the time, she came across some paperwork or something that was in Steve's handwriting that said, 2 cops lived on Janelle Street. Well, I asked Steve, how did you know that? How did you know that 2 cops lived on Janelle Street? And I said, it's in your handwriting. Steve's answer, and I will read exactly words that are in the letter. I've answered this question many times. That's news to me. At church, the Sunday after December 26, 1984, a woman in the church lobby still lived in that neighborhood, and a police neighborhood, and 2 police lived on the street. So what he's saying is a woman who he knew at church was the one who told him, because she lived on that street, that she knew that 2 cops lived on that street as well. That's how I read that. A woman in the church lobby said she lived in that neighborhood and 2 police lived on the street. That's what he's saying. And also, Steve says, to go on, Unsolved Mysteries did an episode on Janelle Matthews' case, stated 2 police and 2 footprints in snow. The episode was later pulled. I have no idea about that. And then he also says about 1992, Sun Valley Police, which is in Idaho, Lieutenant Mark Lockwood had a huge file in front of him talking to me. He said 2 police and footprints in the snow. He denied this in the second trial testimony. Okay. And then he also says, regarding this question, once again, of the 2 police living on the street, shortly before my first trial, 48 Hours interviewed attorney Tony Verst. I saw that in his Denver office. They said police told Panky 2 cops in Neighborhood Street. I assume you could get to watch the 48 Hours interview online. Maybe. I've watched it. I don't remember that being in there, but that doesn't mean it's not in there. So this is his explanation. If you watch the show and they made a big deal, well, how would he have known that 2 police lived on Janelle Street if he didn't know where Janelle lived? What he's saying is that I didn't know the police lived on that street until after Janelle was already missing. And the way I found out was a woman that went to my new church, wherever he was going. They were talking. Somebody was talking about Janelle's disappearance and said something like, yeah, she went missing and 2 cops even live on that street. That is Steve's explanation for that. Because once again, in the show, they make it sound like, well, if he didn't know where Janelle lived, how would he have known that two police officers lived on that street? And I don't even know if that's a fact or not. But it seems he didn't know that. Of course, if you want to believe him, I'm not saying you have to, but I asked him the question. That's what I do. I ask questions. This is his answer. And I'm guessing, once again, he wrote it down. He would say probably because he took an overt interest in Janelle's disappearance. And so all he was doing was accumulating information. Now, the other question I asked that I can't read the answer because I have to look into it first is, why was money in the 1990s going to legal fees? Who was going after you? Once again, this was covered in the Oxygen Network show. You remember Angela talked about how they were hurting for money, and she claimed it was because of people coming after Steve, the police, saying the police were after him. All I will say is that's not what Steve says. And I'm not reading any more than that. All right. But he does answer it. But because of what his answer is, to put it out there publicly, I'm not going to put this out here publicly because of the nature of the answer. I'm not putting that out there until I can prove whether this is true or not. He ends the letter with more answers to your questions in future letters. So there you go. So it sounds to me like Steve is going to attempt, whether you want to believe him or not, to answer all the questions that I sent him. And like I said, if you don't know what those answers are, those questions were, just go back and watch last week's Unfound Live, where I read all of the questions for you. And so he has attempted to answer two of them. Once again, I'm not asking you to believe any of this. Whatever he answers, up to you to believe it. But being that I watched the show and there were things that popped up in there and I was like, oh, really? Well, given that I have this relationship with Steve, writing back and forth to him, I might as well ask him. And I know all of you, no matter if you think he's a murderer or not, I'm sure you want to hear his answers to these questions. So there you go. But I'm only going to read answers that aren't possibly slanderous or something. So I couldn't read the answer to the other question tonight. Maybe at some point in the future, I will. What's going on, Marty? Good to see you. Sarah says I will join. We're going back here. All right. Right on. I'll do it. All right. Rockford. Yeah. Send me a reminder. Because I have the file. And you might get a kick out of it. Sarah, join the think tank. Sarah, it would be spectacular to see you there. Marty's in the think tank, and now Marty's in the chat too. Welcome, Marty. Ferry says BS. Like I said, I'm just here to ask questions. Marty says, gotta love Panky explanations. Yes. Jill says she's back. Marty, I think he's afraid you'll stop talking with him if he answers all the questions at once. I don't know. What he has told me is that the people at the jail only allow him to send 2 sheets of paper per letter. And so all since the beginning, he's never sent me a letter with more than 2 sheets of paper. And I guess he's only allowed to write on one side of them. Whatever. He's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. You know, it's think tank in the house. I got to ask these questions. That's what I do. I'm in the information business. And as long as I have questions, I'll keep asking them. He's not going anywhere. And like I said, it's up to you, all of you, to determine whether he's telling the truth or not. We should also reiterate that if I hope to get the discovery materials, I hope nobody out there will hold anything against me, although they may. He keeps saying you need to get the discovery materials. Okay, well, I'm going to get them. I'm going to try to get them. And then once again, we will get to test Steve Panky's veracity, his honesty. Sarah, I watched the show. It was great. I don't believe the paper. I don't believe the paper story. Okay. Once again, Sarah, whatever you choose to not believe and to believe with Steve Panky and the case and everything, it's up to you. I just continue to make the argument that I do not think they proved that he was guilty. Very well may have killed Janelle, but I certainly don't believe that they proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I'm trying to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, or it may just go in the opposite direction. Marty says, I've always been on the fence about Panky. Never doubted he was a liar, though. Okay. All right, let's get to these, to the items that are mentioned in the title of the Unfound live to know. So let's start with this. A friend of Kanye. Authorities are one step closer in determining what happened to a Washington, D.C. man whose abandoned vehicle was found on a desolate mining road in Bighorn County more than 4 years ago. And this is an article that just came out within the last couple of weeks. Devonte Richardson, 28 years old at the time, drove to Wyoming in July 2020 after telling others he was planning to, quote unquote, help Kanye West. West, a noted musician, businessman, and former presidential candidate, I guess, had just bought 2 ranch properties in Cody and Graybull, which is where it was believed Richardson was headed. There's no evidence suggesting he made it to either ranch. Richardson was reported missing by family on July 22nd of 2020 after they lost contact with him, and his abandoned 2016 Jeep Compass was discovered on a haul road roughly 7 miles outside of Graybull a week later. So I didn't know this. What Kanye West is doing in Wyoming is beyond me. But he bought some property there in Graybull, and it just so happens that Devonte's vehicle was found near Graybull a week later. Despite extensive searches on foot, horseback, aerial, and drone, and canine searches, no trace of Richardson has ever been found. New leads generated by the FBI, which is working hand in hand with the Bighorn Sheriff's Office and the Metro Police Department in Washington, D.C., have helped clarify Richardson's route on the 1,600-mile trip to Wyoming, where his digital footprint ended in Bighorn County. Initially, it was believed that Richardson traveled through Nebraska, but advanced tech used by the FBI now suggests he drove through the high line of South Dakota into Buffalo and through the Bighorn Mountains, according to the Bighorn County Sheriff Ken Blackburn. Blackburn declined to elaborate on how this rerouting changes the focus of the investigation, only to say that it's very active. We've got a very good rapport going with the FBI and DC police. There's been a lot of investigating going on, and there are a lot of leads continuing to be followed upon. I don't know if I'm supposed to believe that or not. Next part of this article is entitled Too Clean. One of the key pieces of evidence in Richardson's case is his vehicle that was found parked on the side of an unpaved bentonite mining road. I guess it's a type of mineral. It showed no sign of mechanical issues. In it were Richardson's digital equipment, including at least 1 cell phone and 2 laptops, as well as a charging cord. Missing were his clothing, a travel bag, wallet, bank cards, or other forms of personal ID. There have been no transactions or activity on his bank accounts since Richardson disappeared. What struck Blackburn the most was the condition of the vehicle, which he says was immaculate inside. Despite having traveled nonstop for more than 24 hours, there were no fast food wrappers or other garbage in the vehicle, typically indicative of cross-county road trips. The forensic examination of the vehicle, its contents, and its condition were not consistent for a vehicle that had just recently traveled across country. It was very clean. It was very organized. Blackburn declined to comment on what such evidence might suggest, only that the vehicle has undergone a thorough examination by the FBI. This case is far from cold. Leads and evidence from the vehicle are being examined with the assistance of other agencies. And it goes on to continue to say they're urging people to come forward. We have to remember this is now over 4 years ago. Now, my question, of course, where this disappearance starts is he said he was going out there to help or meet Kanye West. Now, did he actually know? This, to me, sounds crazy. This, of course, it's not talked. That's just one article, by the way, on Devonte's disappearance. There are many that have been written over the last couple of months because of, an additional investigation, maybe through some sort of technology. I don't know what they're talking about, but determining that they thought that he got to Wyoming one way, but he went a different way. But none of these articles mention anything about how this seems somewhat delusional. I'm just going to get now. Now I realize Kanye West has had his share of issues over the years. Many, 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 many. So I guess on one hand, you could say it does sound like Kanye West might need some help, but it sounded more like, to me, the way I view Kanye West is he needs maybe legal help or psychological help or something like that. What Devonte could have done with him, how he could have helped Kanye West, it just seems very unlikely. But none of these articles say anything like that. It just sounds delusional to me. Now, but on the other hand, though, not on the other hand, but in addition to this, we have to remember how many times we've encountered this on Unfound, where people, before they go missing, they lie. They lie. In fact, the most recent time I think I've talked about this is when Julia from the Consult interviewed me, and it played on her podcast over there. That one of the things that has struck me over the last 8 years of doing this podcast is I didn't think it would be a thing, but it is. How many missing people lie before they go missing? Yeah, come pick me up. 15 minutes later, shows up, nobody's there. Shane Fell, Deborah Bowman, Kevin Newen, on and on and on. We've covered quite a few disappearances like that. Crystal Morrison. Likewise, the stereotypical example, the best example, was the woman Evelyn Piper, who claimed that she was going to go to Israel to get married. The problem was nobody knew she was in a relationship with anybody, and she didn't even have a passport. So how exactly was she getting into Israel? And not to mention, I don't think, maybe people of all denominations go to Israel to get married for some reason. I don't know. But the first thing that strikes me is she's not Jew. I don't think Evelyn Piper was Jewish. But that's what she told her daughter. I'm going to Israel to get married. Now, to me, that kind of comment sounds the same as Devonte saying, I'm going to Wyoming to help Kanye West. So there's that. That's mostly what catches my attention. It just gives me the idea that Devonte mentally was not in a good place. And that doesn't mean he was suicidal or anything, but he was delusional, maybe not understanding reality for what it was and what it is. And that could put anybody in danger. Not necessarily murder danger, but getting into an accident, making bad choices, things like that. They really have nothing to do with being killed, murdered, or anything like that. Moving on, they make a big deal about the car being clean. This sounds like confirmation bias to me. They think something bad happened, thus the car being clean must mean something. I don't know. I would need to know more about Devonte's devotion to his car. I would need to know more about how he usually kept his car. I would need to know, what's the dirtiest anybody had ever seen it on and on. I would need to know more than just they show up at the scene and the inside of the car is clean. I don't know. I've traveled back and forth to my father's quite a few times. I would admit I'm not the cleanest guy, as far as a kind of an OCD situation. I'm not like that. I'm certainly not, I'm not a hoarder or anything, but I don't treat my car or my place like a museum either. I would like to say I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe he was different. I don't know. And if if all he did, there doesn't have to be any wrappers or anything in the car. Maybe he's just a neat guy. He ate through the paper in a waste paper basket. Or when he left his car, seemingly taking a lot of his stuff, maybe he took that stuff with him. Why does a clean car mean murder? It like I said, that sounds to me like I said, like confirmation bias, like the police just wanting to see something. And then finally, regarding this disappearance, I have it written in my notes here. What are the odds that a guy who doesn't know Kanye says he's going to see Kanye, and then instead the guy gets killed in the process? It seems very, very unlikely. So although that article and many others that I've read on Devonte's disappearance kind of go in like the foul play direction, I don't. I'm not even convinced. I'm not even convinced entirely that Devonte is dead. But surely foul play, murder should not be the number one theory. Surely not. So, but you can write in the comments what you think about it. Stephanie says, it reminds me of other cases I've heard of where people make mysterious trips and it ends unfortunately. Amy says Kanye also needs fashion help too. Look at you, Amy. Rockford says, Julia just interviewed Mains 2, not as in-depth, focused on who's in truth, worth checking out. I didn't know that, Rockford. Is that like the most recent episode of The Consult that has come out? So I always thought those episodes came out every Tuesday. Did it already come out? Or was that on his channel or something, Rockford? That's interesting. I didn't know about that. They talk about not as in-depth, focused on who's in truth, worth checking out. It's weird. I don't know how much Ken Mains would know about Jody Who's in Truth's disappearance more than anybody else. What scenes on YouTube? Not regular episode. Okay, thank you. Everybody see that if they want to check out Ken Mains talking to Julia Cowley about Jody Who's in Truth. Go on to YouTube, I guess, on Ken Mains' channel, Rockford, his YouTube channel. I could see them talking about Brenda Condon and some other cases that Ken was involved with personally. It's interesting that talking about Jody Who's in Truth. It's interesting to me. All right, I'm going to answer tonight's question sent in by Jill right now. And I see you out there. Unsolved No More. Thank you, Ferry. That is the name of Ken's channel if you want to check out Julia and Ken talking. I have to admit that I just spoke to Julia a week ago or something. She didn't say anything about it. She's holding out on me. All right. Jill asks, why is it when a body is recently found, they get DNA confirmation within a few days, but when there's a long-term missing person with DNA unfound, it can take months to get confirmation? So we might think about being that show just came out on Netflix regarding Andrea Bowman. Some of you who were around back then, like what was that, 2019? You can remember how long it took to get DNA confirmation on the remains that were found on the Bowman property. You also might remember with Daniel Villarreal when his remains were found, how long it took. But what Jill is asking, then why is it with more recent disappearances when bodies are found, does the DNA seem to take a lot shorter time to determine? Jill, I guess the 3-word answer is I don't know. I'm not a forensics expert. As all of you know by this time, we rarely talk about forensics on any interview. And it's not because I avoid it. It's simply because there's usually nothing to talk about. Rarely do we ever talk about the missing person's blood being left behind, like sort of a violent scene, and the person is missing, and they tested it just to make sure that that's the missing person's blood. You might think, now we have had exceptions to that. Patsy Action, of course, her interior of her car was covered in blood that was shown to be hers. But that is very, very unique in Unfound's history. The only insight that I could ever have on this, Jill, is the reason may be that when you have newer disappearances, it may just be easier to get DNA off those remains than remains that have been, underwater or in the ground or something like that for decades. Maybe. I also think the possibility is that there may be a kind of, this is our perception of what is going on, but is this really what's going on? Jill, I agree with you. That is my perception too. But our perception might not be reality. It may just be how the media portrays it. It's just hard for me to say. Like I said, I don't think that in the work that I do, I am the best person to answer it completely. All I can tell you is that my perception is similar to yours. We've had examples on Unfound where you're right. DNA did take quite a while in disappearances that were somewhat old. Of course, Anya Bowman's at that point was like 30 years old. Daniel Villarreal's, though, murder was a lot younger than that. But still, certainly did not happen a year before his remains were found. So I can only guess that age of the remains may have something to do with it. And we may even think about a disappearance like Ron McNutt, disappearance that I bring up once in a while, where his truck was eventually found down over that hill, wrecked into a tree. It was found after a forest fire had gone through that area. Remains were found in the truck. It is Ron's truck. What makes the most sense, if we want to try to use common sense, even though we know it's not very reliable in what we do, it seems it would be Ron in there. But because of the fire going through and what fire does to DNA and the body in general, they've never been able to get a good DNA sample from those remains. Even though I am inclined to believe that, yes, that's Ron in his truck. Now, why his truck ended up there and everything, don't know. I could guess maybe it was a suicide. And had that forest fire not happened, he and his truck would still be missing. So that's the best I can do under the circumstances, Jill. Let's see here on YouTube, not regular, unsolved, no more. Stella. Hey, Ed, fellow Pennsylvanian here from Pittsburgh. Love your podcast. Look at you, Stella. Great to see you tonight. Maybe your first timer in the live show. Thank you so much. Wondering how you found out about the podcast and how you came to join us tonight on the live show. And what part of Pittsburgh are you from, Stella? Rock found it on Cowley's, but maybe his too. He went to the site of her disappearance on a cross-country trip, and he's had an episode or two about the case. Okay, Rockford, thank you. Regarding Ken Maines. Hazel, what is DNA profiling is paid privately to Othram? For example, that would fast track, huh? I don't know. What? Maybe you want to try to retype that, Hazel. What DNA profiling is paid privately to Othram for, e.g., that would fast track, huh? Maybe you want to try to retype that, Hazel. Maybe use it's a little hard for me to understand if you don't mind me saying. I guess United States and New Zealand separate, as the joke was once said by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde once said about what? The United States and England, two countries separated by a common language. Stella, Hazel was typo. What if DNA profiling is paid privately to Othram, for example? That would fast track. I guess money could make it go faster, Hazel. I guess it could get the money could get moved to the front of the line, but that's a lot of money then, Hazel, being dished out and everything, and it just doesn't seem likely. I'm guessing Hazel was saying money talks. Yes, Money Talks, which is a very funny movie with Charlie Sheen and Chris Tucker. All right, so that's my answer to that, Jill. I wish I could do better on that. Let's move on to this, the Asha Degree case, and it's a long article, and there seems to be some movement here. And what's weird about this is I was actually considering Asha's disappearance for an Unfound episode, although we had not reached out to her family yet when this all kind of broke. It's weird how that happens. But like I said, it's a long article, and I'm going to just read part of it. A girl went missing from Cleveland County in Shelby, North Carolina in 2000, is now believed to have been killed, according to a search warrant documents released Monday. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office believes Asha Degree, who was 9 years old when she went missing in February of 2000, was actually a victim of homicide. Investigators think Degree's disappearance may be linked with a family from Cleveland County. A series of search warrant applications were made public on Monday, September 16th, in connection with searches recently carried out by the Sheriff's Office, FBI, and State Investigations Bureau. Law enforcement executed search warrants at multiple properties, including a home and property in Shelby, an assisted living facility in Vale, and a home in Charlotte. Locations are owned and lived in by members of the Dedman family. The search warrants were requested after DNA samples linked Degree with woman Annalie Dedman Ramirez and a man named Russell Underhill. So there were items of ashes that were eventually found, and when they did forensics on them, eventually, I guess recently, the DNA, we're just talking about DNA with a question from Jill, has sent them to look at these people just recently. Degree has not been seen since she went missing the night of February 14th, 2000. Some of her belongings, however, were found in Burke County more than 1 year after her disappearance. Degree's backpack was discovered more than 30 miles from where she was last reportedly seen, about 17 months after she went missing. The girl's belongings were wrapped in two sealed black plastic garbage bags and were found along Highway 18 near Morganton. Two of the items in the backpack reportedly returned evidentiary results linking DNA to Dedman Ramirez and Underhill. Dedman Ramirez was 13 years old at the time Degree went missing. According to the documents, man, I got a sinus thing going on suddenly. A DNA sample of a hair stem taken from Degree's undershirt appeared to match Dedman Ramirez's DNA. There were two other Dedmon sisters who were ages 15 and 16 years old in February of 2000. Investigators now believe Degree is a victim of homicide with her body concealed. Authorities wrote in the search warrant application because of the Dedmon sisters' ages at the time. Investigators believe adult assistance from their father, Roy Dedmon, and their mother, Connie Dedmon, would have been necessary in the execution and or concealment of the crime. Several search warrants were carried out for the Dedmon parents, Dedmon Ramirez, and multiple properties associated with them. Roy Dedmon's home at 621 Sherryville Road is about 3.7 miles from Degree's last known location near Highway 18 and Wallace Grove Drive. His home and property were searched by law enforcement on Tuesday, September 10th and Wednesday, September 11th. And it says back in February, Roy Dedmon's home was first searched by a drone. Another of the search properties included an assisted living home known as Northbrook Rest Home, located in Vale in Lincoln County. The assisted living facility is owned by Roy and Connie Dedmon. Russell Underhill, the man whose DNA may be a match with DNA found on Degree's belongings, lived in at least two facilities operated by Roy and Connie Dedmon at the time Degree disappeared. He resided at the Northbrook Rest Home between 2002 and 2004. He died in 2004. It is not entirely clear how Underhill was related to or connected with the Dedmons. Underhill knew and associated with Roy Dedmon, investigators found. Roy Dedmon was listed as Underhill's emergency contact, according to medical records. Dedmon Ramirez's home in Charlotte was also searched. And they found a bunch of vehicles. They said they were looking for a 1970s era green Ford Thunderbird or Lincoln Mark IV. They kind of looked the same back then. And the vehicle taken last week from Cleveland property was identified as an AMC Rambler. Oh my goodness. Authorities also took a variety of computers, laptops, cell phones, and records from Roy Dedmon's home. There was also a human tooth and a plastic bag that was retrieved. Ick. Roy Dedmon also had a DNA sample taken from him during that time. Connie Dedmon, Roy's wife, does not currently live at the home on Cherryville Road. Authorities also searched her home and removed two computers, flash, and hard drives. From Dedmon Ramirez's home, authorities only reported seizing a BlackBerry cell phone. Wow, Blackberries. Two witnesses saw Asha Degree walking along Highway 18 on the night she went missing. Roy Dedmon's home on Cherryville Road is fewer than 4 miles and about 6 minutes away from where Degree was last seen by witnesses. Degree's backpack, which contained some clothing and a book, was found along Highway 18, though several miles away from Morganton. The backpack was also about 17.2 miles away from Broughton Hospital. So, obviously, it's a long article. Now, what is still... Now, I will tell you, and me looking at this before all of this came out, my opinion was that the witness's statement should probably totally be ignored. We know about witnesses. They get things wrong. They get the wrong time, wrong date and everything else. And we also have to remember this was at night. And how could they really tell it was Asha or not, no matter what her race is, on and on and on and on and on. Even though in these articles, it seems that they are taking these witness statements as seriously because they keep saying, well, the backpack was found this amount of distance, miles away from where she was seen on that road. So it seems they're taking these witnesses seriously. I don't know if they should or not. Because we have to, something that's hard for me to understand is if these witnesses are telling the truth, then really what was going on here? What really was going on here? Where, if that was Asha out there, remember how old she was? She 9 or whatever. Where was she going? What was she doing out there? With her backpack, walking late at night. What's going on here? Was she running away from home? Is that, if so, what was her plan and where was she was going? Because it does say in one of these articles, I don't know if it's this one or another one, I read several, that there seemed to be no connection between Asha's family and these Deadmans, these other people mentioned in these articles. So it's still hard for me to understand what was going on here. I mean, I'm open to the idea that, somebody groomed her, somehow knew her, and lured her somehow out of her house. But would that person really wait for Asha to walk, 2 or 3 miles away? Would the person not more likely just be right down the street and not 2 miles away? Because it says that she was, if we're to believe it was Asha, that she was like 1.7 miles away from where she lived. Well, what's a predator doing waiting 2 miles away, just hoping that this 9-year-old's going to walk all that way? It seems unlikely. So let's see what everybody's saying about this. Stella says, I found your podcast when you did the Jamie Peterson case from Pittsburgh. Yes, yep, I did that. Another one. I don't remember her name. I'm from the North Hills and Westview area. I live in Ohio now. All right, Stella. Yeah, maybe you're talking about Jamie Peterson, and Blanar was the other one, which was from the New Ken area, which was very close to where I grew up in Leechburg, Stella. I did those two very close to each other, so maybe that's the other one you're talking about. Thank you for finding the live show tonight. Great to see a Western Pennsylvania, at least original Western Pennsylvania person in here tonight. Good to see you. Hazel says, I'm very interested in this development on Asha, Stephanie. That's so sad. Asha's case has stuck with you. Kathy says, Hazel, I learned about Asha's case a couple years ago from John Lorden. Read the articles today about Ash. I'm trying to connect the dots. Speaking of John Lorden, he and I have, over the last few days, had a back and forth over email about Sneha Phillip, because he recently did an episode, given it was September 11th, he recently did an episode on her and her disappearance. And when I saw that, I wrote him and pointed him to the show I did with Dr. Telesco last year about September 11th and Sneha Phillip. Hazel says, I've looked at screenshots of search warrants. Hazel, there's talk that one of the Deadman kids accidentally hit her with the car in the dark. There's a report of seeing her being pulled into the car. Kathy, it was also bad weather at the time. Asha left. She hated walking in the rain. Hazel, I think it was simply she ran away. Her back was filled with clothes. Young kids run away all the time, go a mile or so and go back home. This would be an unlucky anomaly. I see. So I guess we are talking then about running away. Wow. Did she, once again, I have to admit, I looked into it a little bit. Did she have a bad home life? I can't remember the reading I was doing. Did she have a bad home life to the point that she was running away? So this was an accident then? She's walking along the road and one of these kids hit her and all these people cover it up. And in doing so, they just left a trash bag with her stuff in it on the side of the road. That seems like of course it happened. It just seems like a very bad choice. Hazel says, I think maybe, of course, kids can run away because they couldn't have chocolate. That's true, Hazel. Huh. Wonder where she was going. Stephanie, as I recall, she had a sheltered home life and she was afraid of the dark and bad weather, but seemed to have run away. Huh. That is something. I mean, accidents do happen. People get hit, people riding bikes, walking, accidents like that happen all the time. Just don't know how many of them end up in a disappearance, especially when you consider it's a 9-year-old who's walking out in the middle of the night in a rainstorm. I guess that would be the most likely time to hit somebody when it's dark and you can't see and everything, but I don't know. It wasn't on the side of the road. It was buried. Okay, Hazel. That's not what's in the article, but okay. So maybe they're going to get to the bottom of this. The issue may be, though, that there could be other explanations for these hairs and fibers and everything to be on that stuff. Rockford says, I don't know. Home life seems good. Parents check out. Same with brother. What compelled her to leave the house at that time and that weather is baffling. I'd go with future luring of some kind. Then maybe we can think of what recently, what was this young man's name who's still missing, who had slight autism, Sebastian. Seems like he left at night too. Hazel, I'm just saying there's some talk around of what could have transpired. Of course, it could be more sinister. It could be. I just want to know what a 9-year-old's doing out at night in the rain. You think that a 9-year-old said, well, I want to run away, but not tonight while it's raining. I could see a 17-year-old running away in the rain. A 9-year-old, like I said, before all this transpired, I have to admit I was totally rejecting all of the witnesses. So, not sure what to think about that at this point. Obviously, they are believing the stories, and I don't know. So, I'll have time for one more story. And where is it? Where is it? Here we go. DNA testing on skeletal remains found in a car pulled from an Illinois river confirmed these are those two men who vanished in 1976 after leaving a farm auction. Testing performed by the Illinois State Police Division of Forensic Services confirmed they are the remains of Clarence Owens and Everett Hawley. Hawley, 72, of Illinois, Stockton, Illinois, and Owens, 65, of Freeport, Illinois, vanished after leaving a farm auction on February 19th, 1976. Hawley was a real estate broker in Freeport, while Owens was a salesperson in Hawley's firm. This brings us one step closer to providing closure for the families of Clarence Owens and Everett Hawley, who've waited many years for answers that have been affected by this tragic case. In March, people fishing along the Pecatonica River discovered a submerged vehicle in the river using a sonar fish finder. Recovery crews then used a crane to pull the 1966 Chevy Impala from the river in the village of Pecatonica. The men had left the farm auction in that vehicle. More than 100 bones were retrieved from the vehicle and the river at the site about 100 miles west of Chicago. DNA extracted from the bones was compared with DNA profiles from the men's relatives to identify them. Before the DNA testing, the remains were examined by a forensic anthropologist in St. Louis who found no evidence of trauma. Winnebago County Coroner Jeffrey Moraski told the TV station that how the two men died is still unknown, but no foul play is suspected. So somehow they ended up in this car, and they and the car ended up in this river. And on NamUs, by the way, neither of these disappearances were ever on the Charlie Project, but they were both listed on NamUs, and this was what the listing said. Everett Hawley and Clarence Owens were last seen at a farm auction near the Winnebago-Ogle County line, February 19th, 1976. They have never been found. That is it on NamUs. However, I did go back and I found an article originally written about their disappearances on newspapers.com. This comes to us from the Freeport Journal-Standard on February 28th of 1976. The headline is Thorough Search of County Planned. And I'm going to come back to that word thorough in a moment. The Stevenson County Sheriff's Department is conducting a search for two Freeport men missing since February 19th on the theory that they met with foul play. Missing are Everett Hawley, Valley View Drive, and Clarence Owens of South State Avenue. The men were last seen at Owens' son's home in Pecatonica the afternoon of February 19th. The men reported missing by family members the morning of February 20th. Since that time, the Sheriff's Department, state and local police, and many volunteers have joined in one of the most extensive manhunts in recent history. Now, remember how they were found and where they were found. The search expanded a week ago past the initial check of roads the men may have used to reach German Valley, where they failed to keep a 4:30 appointment February 19th. After the quick check of the roads in the area, we have since checked stone quarries, vacant buildings, and the general area. This morning, a massive search is being conducted. The department will be joined by a civil defense unit from Stevenson and Winnebago counties and the Civil Air Patrol. More than 100 persons are expected to take part. We will check everything. The men will be split into crews, and each crew will be given a sector to check, and they will check every inch of that sector. In addition to sheriff's deputies and state police continuing the search around the clock, the sheriff said, "We have gotten quite a bit of help. A lot of concerned people have volunteered, and friends of the two men who knew their habits have pitched in. We're checking on a lot of leads. The two men did not take more than the clothes they were wearing on their backs when they disappeared. There have been no cash personal checks. And the leads the department is following include one centered on a man who was seen leaving a restaurant shortly after the men the day they disappeared, but have produced no results. The sheriff's department has had airport parking lots at O'Hare and other airports checked. State police at Pecatonica have been checking junkyards, motels, towing services in other areas in 4 counties: Stevenson, Winnebago, Joe Davies, and Boone. A nationwide bulletin appealing for information on the car the two men were driving was also issued. You know, we don't hear in that article, even though, let's go to the title of that article again. This is where that line from The Princess Bride comes in. The line is, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. For all of you Princess Bride fans out there. In the article itself, it says thorough search of county planned. Thorough. Like I said, to read it again. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Because in the article, they say they're doing all these searches. You know what's not mentioned? No rivers, no lakes, no ponds. So it wasn't a thorough search. It was a search, and guess what? These two guys were found in a car, in the guy's car, in a river. Now, we now know, of course, here at Unfound, that the longer you go with the people and a car missing, the more likely it's going to be that the car and the people will be found together. And what I haven't done, once again, just in preparing for tonight's show, I suppose if I was going to do, if I would do a deeper dive into this, I could exactly find out where they were and where the car was found and was along the route. I'm guessing it was. And because as places like, Chaos Divers and all those places have found, when these cars and people are found, it's along that route that the people are supposed to be driving. But it seems back then in 1976, even though they used the word thorough, that it wasn't thorough. Because they just, I guess, blew off the rivers, lakes, and ponds. It seems. Now, I will give these people a break if it turns out that these guys ended up in a river way off course. Then nobody could predict that. But I bet this river was along the route that they were supposed to be driving that day. I think that's a pretty good bet. Thus, it was not a thorough search. despite what police said at the time. And I'll say it again. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. So there you go. Let's see what Hazel says. Bag was wrapped and taped in trash bags regarding Asha Degree. Rockford, I don't know. Home life's okay. Hazel, I'm just saying there was some talk. Okay, Hazel, you're right. Early hours of morning, dark and rainy sounds unlikely. Hazel, well, that's an old one with little info. It is Hazel. Hazel also, again, before joining Unfound, I would go to foul play almost every time. Yeah, well, here's what I think I know, Hazel, and I appreciate you always joining us here on these Monday nights. Just by listening to the episodes every Friday and watching the live show, you know more about disappearances and the investigation of them than probably most, if not all, of police officers, investigators in the United States. And that goes for the rest of you as well. You all know more than these departments do as well. Always remember that. And certainly foul play happens, but there should be a good reason to believe that. What I think happened, I'm looking at the ages of these two guys. And if Holly, 72 years old, he could have easily had a heart attack and drove off the road, whoever was driving. 65, 72, I don't think it matters. Things happen. But another disappearance solved, but I can't say that I'm surprised of what the resolution is. Let's get to this Friday now that we are about done. We're going to California on Friday. Northern California, just like that Led Zeppelin song, Going to California. We're going to Northern California, up there to the Humboldt County area for the disappearance of Christopher McNeil. This is a disappearance where a lot of the information is totally up in the air, to the point we don't even have a very precise disappearance date. It was sometime in late June into early July of 2009. That's the best we can do on this. And we're not even sure if he actually disappeared from Hayfork. I'm only using that town is because that's where he was living at the time. His sister Elizabeth, who's been working on this for a long time, is the guest. And you're going to hear about a young man who's 19 years old, seemingly was not into drugs or alcohol, didn't have any mental health issues, could have been in a relationship with the wrong type of girl. But he did get in a little bit of trouble with some guys. They broke into a convenience store or something, and he was supposed to go and show up at the courthouse somewhere around July 9th of 2009. Never showed up. Never seen again. Now, the weird thing is we have 3 different last sightings of him, and you're going to have to choose to believe which one you want to believe. And I don't know if all of these can be resolved. And what's also interesting is one of the last people to see him could have been his own grandparents, who saw him walking along a road during the day. What's also makes this disappearance very difficult is all of the accounts that you will read between now and Friday when this episode comes out, they're all wrong. He was not with a friend of his walking somewhere and the person returned and he didn't. That is surely not what happened. He was not walking along the road with anybody. He might have been walking by himself, but he wasn't walking anywhere. And, this other person, whoever that person could be, did not come back, and Chris did not. That did not happen, even though that's the most public story out there. Little did I know what I was getting into when I happened to reach out to Christopher's family. Elizabeth does a fantastic interview, but she has a very difficult task on her hands. But she seems up to it. So once again, this Friday, Christopher McNeil from Hayfork, California, went missing in late June, early July of 2009. Reminding you that the public account of his disappearance is wrong. And his sister Elizabeth will be the guest. And that's all I have for you tonight. Once again, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel like Sarah did tonight by joining this channel. Thank you, Sarah. And of course, Charlie, a little super sticker tonight. Thank you for that. Subscribe, share, like, join patreon.com/unfound podcast. And that's it. Keep your heads on swivels out there. Do not be a victim. Always be aware of your surroundings. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. And you'll hear me on Friday for the disappearance of Christopher McNeil. Good night.